Alright, what's going on, internet? Thank you for joining me again here today. Lately I've been dealing a lot with base64 encoded binary data, and I think that sounds way more complicated than it needs to. So I thought let's break it down, because it doesn't really need to be intimidating. So when we think about base64 information, it's used when we're needing to transfer or store data. So we can't always do that as a file, like a PDF. Sometimes we need to handle it in a more text-based format. For a Word doc, we could just store the content, which is fine if you're happy to lose the formatting, but it doesn't really help if you've got a video or a picture that you need to send as text. So in comes binary data. We can use the computer to understand what the actual backend ones and zeros of the file are. And to safely use that in something that expects text as an input, like a database or an API call, then we can encode that signal. So one of the most common ways to do that is base64. So base64 is kind of like representing a song with sheet music, notes written on a page that give the computer the instructions for how to put the file back together again. Now, Python, one of my favorite languages, has a built-in library for this. So when we're working in Python, out of the box, there is a built-in base64 library. So we don't need to use pip to install anything. We're just good to go out of the box. It has all the basic functions included to manage encoding and decoding the data for us. It even has everything you need to manage streaming data for larger files, but that's not something we're going to be touching on today. If this video does well, maybe we'll look at doing a similar video, but with a larger file, like a video file, where we might need to chunk that down and stream it. So for right now, let's have a look at how we would do this. So the library name is, it's just import base64. It's a very unusual name. I know you would never think to call it something like that, but if you can just try and remember when you're trying to encode something with base64 that you need to import base64 somehow, I think we'll all get through this together. Now, when we're looking at encoding a file, so let's use the example of a PDF. We're going to need to open that PDF first and take a look at what that file is. So I've created a PDF called, very creative, I know, input.pdf. I've saved that in our folder that we're working in right here. So I can just simply type with open input.pdf in inverted commas, and we're going to put it in read binary mode, RB, and we're going to refer to it as PDF file. We're going to have the PDF bytes be equal to PDF file.read. So now we're going to have a variable called PDF bytes that contains all of those sort of ones and zeros we were talking about before, that make up the signal for this. So we've got that stored. Now we're going to take our PDF bytes and we're going to encode those into base64. So we'll have a base64 bytes, and we're going to take our base64 library. We're going to use the base64 encode function that's in there, and we're going to pass in PDF bytes to to be encoded in base64 formatting. So that function takes binary data and turns it into base64 encoded data. So it's still not a regular string though. So we want to have that as something that's converted into readable text, a string as you would say. We need to to decode that into, we're going to say UTF-8, which changes it into sort of a human readable string of letters and numbers. So this is useful if you want to print it out or send it over a JSON payload in an API or embed it into HTML. Whatever you need a text-like string of data that represents your file to be, this is how we get it. So we'll go base64 string is equal to base64 bytes, a variable up here, dot decode, take it and put it into UTF-8 format, which is a human readable string. And then we will go print base64 string. I'll make this in. Actually, no, let's do it on separate lines so we can see how it goes. And then we'll say print b64 string. All right. This should be everything we need, minus the inevitable typos, to take our input.pdf file and then output a base64 string by grabbing the bytes that make up the file, creating our the bytes that make up the file, the bytes for base64 file, and then converting that into a string. So let's try it out. Python main.py, so that's what I've called it. Run that, and here we go. There is a lot of just random characters here. This is what base64 looks like. This is a pretty small PDF, and this is a pretty long string. So this is not necessarily a storage efficient way of handling. It's not like you're zipping a file down and condensing it down. This PDF literally just contains the words, I am a PDF. So it's, given it's just a text string, it would have been easier for me to send the string, I am a PDF. But to actually capture all the formatting or any images or anything that go in there, this is the instructions that would allow you to build that out into a PDF again. So why don't we do that? Why don't we actually take this string? I'm going to decode that base64 string back into the original binary data. So we'll go decoded bytes equals base64, and we'll take base64, and we will use the function base64 decode, and we'll pass in our base64 string. And that's going to take the string that we've created and essentially recreate the original raw bytes, the ones and zeros that make that up. Then we're going to take that and we're going to write it, the decoded bytes, out to a new PDF file. So we'll say with open decoded.pdf in WB, write bytes, open type as PDF file. We will set PDF file, which we're using the name from above, dot write decoded bytes. And then we'll write out ourselves a little message. Print decoded PDF saved as decoded.pdf. Awesome. So we're creating a variable which is just our decoded bytes by decoding our base64 string. We're going to say open decoded.pdf. Because that doesn't exist yet, it will create it for us. And then we're going to call that PDF file, and we're going to write to it our decoded bytes. Let's give that a whirl. Scroll. Let's clear this. And we'll go Python main.py. All right. Now it's told us here that it's created that file. So let me open that up and we can see we have decoded.pdf. This is a PDF file. We have recreated our file. So we look in our directory, we can see that we've now got main.py, we've got our input.py, and we've got our pdf.py. And it's kind of that simple. So I hope that's helped. I hope that's helped you understand a little bit more about base64 and what that is and when you would need it, why it's helpful, as well as helping you to handle that data type. If you need to send a file over an API, if you need to store a file in a text-based format within a database. Mind you, from a space perspective, it's more efficient to store the files somewhere and then reference them in the database. But if you want to store everything 100% in the database, and then you can just move your database around without worrying about moving all the files around, this allows you to capture those files, store them as text, and then recreate them at a later point. So hope that's been helpful. If it has, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you want to stay up to date with what's going on, hit the little bell icon if you're particularly enthusiastic. If you've got any questions, drop them as a comment down below. Love to hear it. We'll get back to you as soon as I can. And till next time, have a good one.